Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got 5 extremely cool pocket knives to share with you guys. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait. There's some wacky stuff on this list. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me. And please, make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Some of this stuff on this list is going to be immediately available. Some of it is not available yet, and it will become available. You'll just have to check the links in the description to see. But anyways, availability is not necessarily the number one criteria. It's that they're cool and that they exist, and I want to share them with you guys. So, starting off here with the first one, this is actually a budget knife. I wanted to ease into this. This is the Keto Ventor, or at least that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Why is this so interesting? This has actually one unique feature that I think is fun. Number one, it's $55. We got diamond textured G10. We got 14C28N, kind of an interesting blade, right? I know you're going to tell us that the interesting feature is a button lock, right? No! The interesting feature here is that, oh, okay, so it's a button operated liner lock. Hold on! It's a button operated liner lock where you can access the liner lock from the front, which seems like a silly thing that should have been available a long time ago, but until this knife came along, I don't think it exists. This is the first time I've seen a button-operated liner lock that is actually accessible from the front so that you can manipulate the liner lock itself. Usually, for example, like on the what do you call it? The Rhino, the Remet Rhino, is a button-operated liner lock, but the liner lock itself is completely inaccessible, and the only way to move the lock out of the way is to push the button, which you can do on this knife if you want to. But for those of you who want to operate this knife via the liner lock itself, you can absolutely do that. You can actually ignore the button completely, making it kind of cool. Is it unnecessary? I don't know. It's kind of hair-splitting, but I think it's cool. In fact, I think it's so cool that all button lock or button-operated liner locks should be built this way. This is a really good idea. I would love for there to be slightly more access to the liner lock, right? But I mean, at $55, it's really hard for me to complain. Personally, I don't care for the giant lanyard hole back here, but I just can't bring myself to care because truthfully, I can get a full grip on this knife. This is such a fun little knife, and I like that it has that one unique feature, and on top of that, it's Keto, so it's built super duper well. Really good stuff. Honestly, great geometry, great lockup, all of that. The Ventor, when you look at the name, you'll understand why I'm pronouncing it that way, is honestly a pretty cool knife. I just wish it didn't have this ring in the end. But hey, hope to see more stuff like this from Keto and any other company who decides to build their locks like this. Moving on here, let's share one that's weird. And if you've been watching my live streams, you've probably seen this. But if not, wow, this is the EMP EDC Pulse R prototype. Probably the widest full-size OTF that most of you have ever seen. Now, think what you want about the PP scales. That's right, I said PP scales. I said it, so you can't say it first. I said it. I said PP. I made the joke that everybody else was thinking. Hive mind. Yeah, whatever. It's going to have different colored scales as an option, I'm sure. But what's cool about this is the massive width or height of the blade. This allows an OTF to actually have an edge that gets thin because there's so much more room to taper versus a traditional OTF. Take the Combat Troodon, for example, even in drop point, right? That's a fairly wide blade for an OTF. Guess what? It doesn't really get all that thin. This guy is not only thin, it's hollow ground. Absolutely ridiculous. And on top of that, the firing power is off the charts. God dang, that is so much blade just absolutely cannon blasting in and out of the frame. It also is a little, well, here's the thing. I don't want to say it's more comfortable. There's just more to hang on to, right? So it's kind of tricking my brain, like the wow factor is tricking my brain into thinking that it's more ergonomic. And realistically, I'm not sure that I actually think that, but it's fun, that's for sure. I have no idea how this is going to be priced. The idea here is to bring awareness to this. So you want to follow EMP EDC and check out their website for updates and things like that. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. My guess is it will be fairly expensive, but I believe they're using a Chinese OEM for this one. So it's not going to be like $400 or $500 or anything like that. But still, very, very cool. I would be very interested to see if they do some different blade shapes. I mean, I love this one. It's really cool, but I would love to see something a little bit different. moving on here, let's take a look at something new from Chavez knives. That's the 229 with the flipper tab. We've already seen that. I know you've already seen that, right? This has the kick stop flipper that disappears when you flip it out. But have you seen the version that is chisel ground? That's kind of weird. I think there's actually a few other channels out there that have showcased this. We haven't seen a chisel grind on a knife. I mean, yeah, they exist, right? But we don't see them hardly ever. As far as I can understand, the idea behind the chisel grind is it's not a conventional V grind, right? You can actually see it here. This is going to bother some people. When I first got this, I was like, oh, it's off center. Then I realized, no, the grind is all to one side. So the idea here, as far as I know, unless I'm just terribly uneducated when it comes to chisel grinds, which is actually pretty likely, so feel free to correct me in the comment section, is that whatever the conventional V grind would be, this actually ends up being quite a bit thinner. Now, where I'm a little confused is exactly how you would sharpen this. Would you sharpen it the same way on both sides? I don't think so, right? You can see the cutting bevel is much thinner here. But this is interesting. And for those of you who don't obsess over symmetry of the blade, you might actually find this kind of cool. Now, this is a pretty expensive knife. I love the kickstop flipper, especially on the 229, and I love the 229 profile and model as a whole. I actually own like 5 of these things now. I also like the black and bronze combination of this guy. It's gonna be, I'm thinking this knife is maybe north of 400, but really cool. And the fact that we have a chisel grind here is kind of, it's almost like they're dipping the toes in the water to see, like, would people be interested in this? Some people, obviously it's not gonna be for everybody, but it is cool. And you know, I'm saying that because I just haven't seen very many chisel grinds since Emerson knives were a lot more popular. They're still popular, but I mean, let's be real. Emerson knives aren't nearly as popular as they used to be, right? And it's been that long since I've seen a chisel grind. So pretty cool. Moving on to something that is absolutely one of the more interesting knives on the list. I know, hard to imagine, right? This is the Alan Ishowitz and Les George EK folder, modeled apparently after the dagger design. Was that a George, or was that also a collaboration with Ishowitz? I'm so sorry if I don't know that, but it does capture that look really well. And for people who are into symmetry, I think you'll really appreciate this one. We don't generally get folding knives with this aesthetic. Now, you know, people who are observant will be quick to point out that the pivot is not as centered as the body screws here, which are actually just decorative, because this is an integral. This is an integral, a titanium integral. Holy moly. The handle is actually milled from a single block of titanium, which is something that I love. If you're familiar with my channel, you know that I love integrals. So the screws are just decorative, and, you know, I guess to match the original EK dagger that one or both of them did. But the pivot is slightly off, I think, basically to make sure that the leverage is correct when you deploy the blade, which makes sense to me. We have a matching thumb disc and an absolutely beautiful and symmetrical, or as far as they can, with a bayonet grind. A beautiful blade here. This comes in a few different configurations. You can get it in like tiger stripe, and there's a couple of different blade options, including a blade with you know, a much higher grind. Like, you don't have this line down the center, so the edge is a little bit more slicey. But for me, this is just a really, really cool pocket knife design it's an aesthetic that we just don't normally see. And on top of that, it's actually pretty big. This thing comes in, I think, well, you know what would be great is if I had my measuring tape. There we go. It's right here. I think this thing comes in close to 9 inches. 8.5. Okay. But yeah, that's wild. 3.75 inches of blade and 3.5 inches of cutting edge. Absolutely spectacular. This is so cool and so different from what I normally see on the channel. I know there's going to be tons of people pointing out, that's not practical. That's not practical. You're missing the point here, right? Welcome to the knife world. Punch and pie in the corner, right? You're clearly still stuck in the tutorial. You'll figure it out. It's so condescending. I'm sorry. High five, right? It's cool. Welcome. But this is just, it's just flat out interesting. It's just a wild, different design. And you know what? If you want to carry and use it, it's absolutely built, you know, perfectly well. It's certainly a durable and capable knife, right? But they sacrifice a little bit of convenience and utility in the blade geometry and ergonomics department for cool factor. And that is completely and totally fine for people who are looking for it and are perfectly aware of what they're buying. This is an awesome option. Expensive though, and I don't know how many they still have in stock. Perhaps they'll restock in the future. In fact, I think that is absolutely the case. So if you go to the website and it says out of stock, do not come back here and scream at me. I imagine that they will make more. In fact, I am 99.9% certain that they will make more and just need to restock. Moving on here to the final and, in my opinion, the coolest knife. Also the most expensive knife in the bunch, and that is the new Machine-Wise Sonora button lock integral that is made in the United States. Oh my goodness. A lot of people say, Metal Complex, you don't show enough knives that are made in the United States. Why? Why don't you show knives that are made in the United States? Why? Well, the answer to that question is, I actually do. I show tons of knives that are made in the United States, but much less than knives that are made elsewhere. Why? Because it's really, really expensive to manufacture knives in the United States, so we have substantially less companies doing it versus China, Taiwan, Italy, Japan, right? On and on and on and on. That's factually true. On top of that, the stuff that's being made in the United States is so underwhelming. The stuff that I haven't reviewed. So if you're going to ask me that question, you should go back and see what I've already looked at. And the answer is, I've looked at a lot of the interesting stuff, and the stuff that's not interesting is there, but it's not interesting. This is interesting, but the end result is obviously a much higher price tag. If you're not familiar with American manufacturing, when it's truly done in-house, especially when we're talking about MagnaCut, titanium milled like this, contoured and integral, oh yeah, the price goes way up. So, no, this is not the same thing as one of the Kershaw Launch Series knives that cost about $150. This is wildly different and wildly more expensive to make. I just want to point that out before people go and look up the price tag and then come back here to crucify me. The Sonora is very interesting for, number one, being a button lock, number two, being a titanium integral, number three, being manufactured in the United States, completely and totally in-house, everything except for the bearings, by the way. And number four, being made to such a ridiculous, the tolerances on this knife are absurd. I cannot tell you how utterly perfect everything is. The machining, the blade. Yes, that bevel's done like that on purpose. I know people are going to point out, oh, they messed the bevel up. They made it wide up top and thin at the bottom. Nope, that's actually done on purpose. A similar thing is done with the Tanto version of the Umnumzan from Chris Reeve. But it's perfectly symmetrical on both sides. I don't know if we can actually see that there, but that is absolutely done on purpose. Beautiful tumbled finish, beautiful micro milling. We have this piece right here, which is access to the internal since there's no body screws or anything like that. The action is smooth beyond smooth. It's very rare that I handle a knife that is this smooth. It's also completely and totally solid on lockout. This ends up being a $650 knife, which if you look at its actual competition, right? I'm talking elements that you must consider if we're going to compare apples to apples. Don't tell me X or Y company is making an integral in the United States and it's only $400 or $450. Is it actually milled like this? Is it actually contoured titanium? Is it an integral? All of those things will they will stack massive costs on top of each other, right? There are some U.S. companies that are making some impressive integrals for a little bit less, but none that I've seen are actually contoured. And the reason I keep pointing that out is because the machines required to contour titanium are absurdly expensive. They are not cheap machines, right? So doing this kind of thing normally is exclusive to China. I'll give you an example of a Chinese integral that is very impressive but wildly overpriced is whatever the new James brand integral is. That knife is the same price or more than this knife, and that knife is entirely made in China, which is absurd to me. This is just as, if not more impressive, and it's actually being made here in the United States. So as far as real competition, I don't think I've seen anything like the Sonora. Not anything exactly like it. I really have to applaud Machine-Wise. I think they made something truly spectacular here. I have a feeling this is going to be, even at that price point, it's going to be a wildly popular knife. And something that I want people to understand about these small batch USA companies, small batch is not just a label we throw out there for no reason. Small batch means small batch. They cannot produce these things at the same capacity that Benchmade makes the bug out. It simply isn't possible. So whatever they are able to produce, it will likely get bought up very, very quickly. And I would imagine that they will continue to produce things like this in the future in other small batches. But, you know, if they've got 1,000 people wanting these knives, I would venture to guess it's very unlikely they'll be able to produce 1,000 of them at a time. Much, much less, right? This is a growing company, and I believe they were originally known for doing ballast songs, but everything that I have found out about them suggests that they've been doing really good work for a really long time. Very cool, and I love that the pocket clip is mounted like this. We can flip it over to the other side and have it set up for lefty carry. I also like how they did the lanyard hole here. That's really nice. We didn't have to have a hole in the scales visible from the side, right? I also really like how they have patterned this out and done this sort of bordering line all the way around to separate the different angles of milling there. That is really classy. This is just a very spectacular knife from Machine Wise. Now, you know, if $650 knives aren't your cup of tea, I get it, but credit where it's due. I think they have this priced correctly, and I think they have something really special here. So for those of you who are in the buying market for this type of thing, this is definitely something that should be on your radar. That's going to be pretty much it today, guys. I'll go back through everything that I talked about today. Once again, we have the Machine Wise Sonora. We have the Alan Ishowitz and Les George EK Folder Integral. We have the Chavez 229 Chisel Ground with the kickstop flipper. We have the EMP EDC Pulse R prototype. Remember, that's a prototype. And then we have the Ventor by, I keep wanting to say Kunmu, but I know that that's not right. It's Keto Ventor who's producing that. The only budget knife on the list, but definitely a cool one. I hope you guys enjoyed. These are always fun to do. I will link everything that I can in the description, and if I can't link it, I will at least link somewhere where you can get information from it now or in the future. That's going to be pretty much it for today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.